My husband looked at our newborn twins, then looked at me with disgust and said, "You're a disgrace to my company's image." The words hit harder than the physical exhaustion of a 30-hour labor. I was still in the hospital bed, the scent of antiseptic and new life lingering in the air, but the warmth I felt holding my son and daughter vanished instantly. Ji-hoon didn't reach out to touch the babies. He didn't kiss my forehead or tell me I had done a good job. Instead, he stood at the foot of the bed in his perfectly tailored Italian suit, adjusting his silk tie as if my presence were a stain on his polished world. "Do you have any idea how many cameras will be at the charity gala next month?" he asked, his voice cold and clinical. "I am the face of this firm, Min-hee. I can't have a wife who looks like she's given up on herself. When you've let yourself go, and quite frankly, it's embarrassing." I looked down at my body, still swollen from the surgery, and then at the two tiny miracles sleeping in the plastic bassinets. I had risked my life to bring his children into the world, but to Ji-hoon I wasn't a mother or a partner. I was an accessory, and currently, I was an accessory that didn't fit the brand. The ride home from the hospital was silent. I expected flowers or a nursery filled with balloons. Instead, when we walked into our penthouse, the dining table wasn't set for a celebratory meal. On the marble surface sat a single gym membership card and a printed lifestyle contract drafted by his legal team. "Sign it," he commanded, pouring himself a glass of whiskey. "It outlines your daily caloric intake and a mandatory 3-hour workout schedule starting next week. If you want to keep the lifestyle I provide, you will return to your pre-pregnancy weight within 90 days. I won't have the board members whispering that the boss's wife has lost her discipline." I felt a lump form in my throat, a mixture of shame and rising heat. For years, I had played the role of the perfect corporate wife. I had organized his schedules, hosted his clients, and dimmed my own light so he could shine. I thought the birth of our children would finally melt the ice around his heart. I was wrong. That night, as I struggled to nurse the twins with stitches still stinging in my abdomen, Ji-hoon entered the room. He didn't offer to help. He didn't ask if I needed water. He simply looked at the way my nursing gown fit and sighed with audible revulsion. "Cover yourself up," he muttered. "You look like a stranger." He walked out, clicking the door shut behind him, leaving me in the dark with two crying babies and a shattered heart. For the first time, I looked into the mirror across the room. I didn't see the disgrace he described. I saw a woman who had been hollowed out by a man who loved power more than people. The Korean boss thought he could manage me like one of his employees. He thought fear and humiliation would make me run back into his mold. But as I held my daughter close, I realized that if I stayed this way, broken and desperate for his approval, I would be teaching her that her value was also tied to a scale. I picked up the lifestyle contract from the nightstand and ripped it into pieces. He wanted a transformation? Fine. I would give him one. But it wouldn't be for his company's image, and it certainly wouldn't be to save a marriage that was already dead. The fire was back in my eyes, and for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of the boss. I was ready to become my own. The drive home from the hospital was not the joyous procession I had imagined during those long months of bed rest. There were no soft songs playing on the radio, no gentle hand reaching over to squeeze mine, and certainly no whispered promises about our future as a family of 4. Instead, the only sound in the luxury SUV was the hum of the engine and the occasional, rhythmic clicking of Ji-hoon's thumbs against his phone screen as he replied to urgent work emails. He didn't look at the twin car seats once. To him, they were just additional cargo that had finally been cleared for transport. When we pulled into the driveway of our glass and steel penthouse, I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. My body ached in ways I couldn't describe, a heavy, dragging soreness that made every movement feel like I was walking through deep water. I carried our daughter, and the nanny, whom Ji-hoon had hired without consulting me, carried our son. Ji-hoon walked several paces ahead, his stride brisk and impatient, as if he were trying to distance himself from the slow, shuffling pace of a woman in recovery. "I have a board meeting in an hour," he said over his shoulder as we entered the foyer. "I've already had the staff clear out the junk food from the pantry. We need to start the reclamation process immediately." I stepped into the dining room, expecting to see perhaps a vase of lilies or a welcome home banner. My heart sank. The expansive marble table was empty, save for a single heavy manila envelope and a small plastic card that caught the light. I walked closer, my breath hitching in my chest. The plastic card was a VIP membership to an elite high-intensity boxing gym downtown, one known for its body transformation boot camps. Beside it lay a document titled Spousal Appearance and Health Agreement. It was a diet contract, drafted with the same cold precision he used for his multi-million-dollar mergers. "What is this, Ji-hoon?" I whispered, my voice trembling. He poured himself a glass of alkaline water, not offering me any. "It's a roadmap, Min-hee. You've become soft, not just physically, but mentally. That contract outlines your caloric limits, your daily weigh-in requirements, and a list of social events where you are expected to appear at a specific size. If you want to remain the wife of the CEO, you have to look the part. I won't have people thinking I've lost my standards at home." I looked down at the paper. It was filled with grueling schedules that left no room for recovery, let alone for bonding with my babies. It treated my body like a failing subsidiary that needed to be restructured or liquidated. Under the consequences section, his legal team had highlighted clauses regarding the reduction of my monthly allowance and social suspension if milestones weren't met. "I just had surgery," I said, my voice gaining a jagged edge of anger. "I am healing. Our children need me." Ji-hoon set his glass down with a sharp clack and looked me dead in the eye. "The children have a nanny. What I need is a wife who doesn't make me look weak. You have 1 week to rest. On the 8th day, you start the program. Don't make me regret choosing you, Min-hee." He turned on his heel and walked toward his home office, the door shutting with a final echoing thud. I stood alone in the silent, beautiful room, looking at the gym card. He thought he was giving me an ultimatum to save my marriage. He didn't realize that with every cold word, he was actually handing me the tools to build a life without him. I wasn't going to sign his contract, but I was going to change. Just not in the way he expected. The 8th day arrived not with the sound of birds, but with the harsh, metallic chime of an alarm clock Ji-hoon had set for 5 a.m. I was still exhausted, having spent the night soothing the twins. But Ji-hoon was already dressed in a charcoal suit looking at me with a critical eye. He didn't ask how I felt. He simply pointed at a cocktail dress he had laid out on the chair, a dress 3 sizes smaller than what I could currently fit into. "We have a dinner tonight with the regional directors," he said, checking his watch. "I expect you to be there, and wear the shapewear I ordered. I won't have you spilling out of your seat like a common housewife." The drive to the high-end steakhouse was suffocating. The corset underneath my dress was so tight I could barely draw a full breath, and the stitches from my surgery throbbed with every bump in the road. Ji-hoon sat beside me, scrolling through his tablet, occasionally glancing at my profile with a look of disappointment. When we arrived, he didn't offer his arm. He walked ahead, leaving me to navigate the heavy glass doors alone. The private dining room was filled with the elite of his company, men in expensive suits, and their impeccably thin wives. As we took our seats, the waiter approached with a tray of appetizers. I reached for a small piece of bruschetta, my stomach growling after a day of the liquid diet Ji-hoon had enforced. Before my fingers could touch the bread, Ji-hoon's hand clamped down on my wrist. The table went silent. "Careful, Min-hee," he said, his voice carrying a forced, jovial tone that didn't reach his cold eyes. "If you eat that, the chair might give way. I've already had to pay the carpenter to reinforce our bed at home." A few of the directors chuckled nervously, glancing at each other. I felt the blood rush to my face, a heat so intense it made my ears ring. I tried to pull my hand away, but his grip remained firm. I'm just joking, of course, Ji-hoon continued, addressing the table while keeping his eyes locked on mine. But seriously, isn't it amazing how much space a woman can take up after having kids? I told her she's eating for 3 now, herself and the 2 versions of her that she's currently wearing. The laughter grew louder this time, emboldened by the boss's lead. One of the junior executives piped up, trying to score points with Ji-hoon. Well, sir, they say a happy wife is a well-fed wife. Then, my wife must be the happiest woman in Seoul, Ji-hoon shot back, signaling the waiter to take the appetizers away from my reach. In fact, let's skip her entree. Just bring her a glass of ice water. We wouldn't want her to lose her investment in those curves. I sat there frozen, she the target of a dozen pitying or mocking stares. The Korean boss was putting on a show, using my body as the punchline to prove his dominance. He wanted everyone to see that he was in control of everything, even his wife's dignity. I looked at the glass of water the waiter placed in front of me. I saw my reflection in the crystal, pale and trembling. For a second, I wanted to burst into tears and run from the room. But then I looked at Ji-hoon. He was laughing, clinking glasses with a director, completely indifferent to the soul he was crushing beside him. The pain in my abdomen transitioned from a dull ache to a sharp, cold clarity. He thought he was breaking me down to rebuild me in his image. He didn't realize that by stripping away my pride in front of these people, he had finally stripped away my loyalty too. I didn't reach for the bread again. I didn't cry. I sat perfectly still, memorizing every laugh and every insult. I wasn't a disgrace to his company. He was a disgrace to our family. And as the dinner dragged on, I started planning exactly how I would make him regret every joke he had told at my expense. The silence of the penthouse usually felt like a sanctuary when the twins were finally asleep. But tonight, it felt like a tomb. I was standing in the kitchen, nursing a lukewarm cup of herbal tea, the only thing allowed on my approved list, when I heard the low, melodic hum of Ji-hoon's voice coming from his private study. The door was cracked just a sliver, a golden bar of light spilling onto the dark hardwood hallway. I shouldn't have listened. I should have walked away and crawled into my lonely bed. But something about the tone of his voice stopped me. It wasn't the cold, professional bark he used with his employees, or the biting sarcasm he reserved for me. It was relaxed, familiar. He was talking to his mother. "Mother, please stop sending the traditional postnatal soups," Ji-hoon said, his voice echoing with a weary sigh. "Min-hee doesn't need nourishment. She needs a miracle." Honestly, I walked behind her at the gala last night and I felt like I was following a stranger. She's twice the woman I married, and not in the way any man wants. I felt a sharp, cold prickle at the back of my neck. I stepped closer, my hand trembling against the cool plaster of the wall. I know," he continued, responding to a muffled comment from the speakerphone. "She gave me heirs. I'm grateful for the twins, of course. But a CEO's wife is an ambassador, Mother. She is a reflection of my discipline and my success. Right now, she looks like a failure. It's reached the point where I'm making excuses to my colleagues about why she can't attend weekend retreats. I'm embarrassed to be seen with her." There was a pause, and then his voice dropped an octave, becoming more calculated. "I've already spoken to the firm's lawyers about a contingency plan. If she doesn't drop the weight and regain her edge by the end of the quarter, I'm moving forward with a separation. I've already started looking for someone slimmer, someone who understands that beauty is a job requirement in this house. There are plenty of young associates who would jump at the chance to step into her shoes, and they actually fit into a size 0. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The tea mug slipped from my fingers, shattering against the floor. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet apartment. I didn't wait for him to come out. I didn't want to see his face or hear his excuses. I retreated into the nursery, leaning against the crib where my son and daughter slept, their tiny chests rising and falling in perfect innocent rhythm. My heart wasn't just breaking, it was hardening. For months, I had been trying to shrink myself to fit back into his life. I had apologized for my body, hidden my scars, and swallowed his insults like bitter medicine, all because I thought I needed him to be whole. But hearing him discuss me like a piece of outdated office equipment, a failure to be replaced by a newer model, snapped the last thread of my devotion. He didn't want a wife, he wanted a trophy. He didn't want a mother for his children, he wanted a mannequin that wouldn't embarrass him at the country club. As I looked at my children, I realized that the slimmer replacement he was looking for didn't exist, because the woman he thought he owned was already gone. The tears I had been holding back for weeks finally came, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were a cleansing fire. I wiped my face with the back of my hand, feeling the solid weight of my own strength for the first time since the hospital. Ji-hoon wanted a transformation. He was going to get one. But it wouldn't be the submissive, starving girl he expected. I was done trying to fit into his world. It was time to start building my own. The next morning, the sun climbed over the Seoul skyline, hitting the glass of the penthouse with a blinding glare. For the first time since the twins were born, I didn't wait for the alarm. I didn't wait for Ji-hoon's cold morning critique or the nanny's pitying look. I stood up, my legs steady despite the lingering ache of recovery, and I walked to the bathroom. I looked at the woman in the mirror. Really looked at her. She was tired, yes. Her body carried the soft silver map of motherhood. But she wasn't a disgrace. She was a survivor. I picked up the designer scale Ji-hoon had placed in the center of the floor like a silent judge. I didn't step on it. Instead, I shoved it deep into the back of the linen closet, buried under a pile of old towels. I was done letting a number decide if I was allowed to have a good day. My transformation began in the small hours of the morning, in the quiet space between the twins' first and second feedings. While Ji-hoon slept soundly in the master suite, dreaming of mergers and slimmer replacements, I cleared a space in the nursery. I didn't go to the elite boxing gym he had chosen for me. I wasn't going to spend my energy in a place where people would look at me through his lens of fixing a problem. Instead, I found an old yoga mat and started with simple, functional movements. I focused on my breath, the deep, rhythmic breathing I had forgotten how to do while living under his thumb. At first, my muscles screamed. My core felt like it had been unzipped, and my stamina was non-existent. But every time I felt like quitting, I remembered his voice on the phone with his mother. I remembered the way he had laughed at the dinner table. Not for him, I whispered to the empty room as I held a shaking plank position. For me, and for them. I began to educate myself, not on how to starve, but on how to fuel a body that had performed the miracle of birth. I ignored the diet contract in the kitchen. When Ji-hoon was at the office, I prepared meals rich in protein and greens, eating for strength instead of restriction. I hid my healthy groceries behind his expensive bottles of wine. I wasn't just losing the weight he hated. I was shedding the psychological weight he had piled on my shoulders for years. I also started reclaiming my mind. While I walked the twins in the park, pushing the heavy double stroller up hills until my lungs burned, I listened to business podcasts and legal seminars. I had been a top-tier consultant before I married the boss, and it was time to wake that woman up. I realized that my biggest weakness wasn't my waistline, when it was the fact that I had let him make me feel small. As the weeks passed, the physical changes were subtle, but the internal shift was seismic. My posture straightened. My voice lost its hesitant, questioning upward lilt. When Ji-hoon would return home and lob a passive-aggressive comment about my progress, I didn't flinch. I would simply offer a polite, empty smile and continue my work. He noticed I wasn't crying anymore. He noticed I wasn't begging for his approval. He took it as a sign that I was finally falling in line. He had no idea that I was actually building a fortress. I was getting stronger every day, preparing for the moment I would walk out of his shadow and into the light of my own making. The secret start wasn't about a dress size. It was about the moment I realized that the only person who could truly fire me from my life was me. The stroller felt lighter in my hands as I pushed it through the brisk afternoon air of the park, though I knew it was actually my arms getting stronger. For weeks, I had lived in a vacuum, my only interactions being the cold demands of Ji-hoon or the silent professional presence of the nanny. I was reclaiming my body, but my mind still felt like a hollowed-out building. That changed on a Tuesday afternoon when a familiar voice cut through the sound of the wind. Min-hee? Is that actually you behind those oversized sunglasses? I froze. Standing near a stone fountain was Miss Park, the woman who had been my senior director back when I was the lead analyst at a rival firm. And before I had met Ji-hoon, before I had become a project to be managed, I was the woman Ms. Park had once called the sharpest mind in the logistics sector. Ms. Park, I said, my voice sounding thin even to my own ears. I instinctively adjusted the baggy sweater I was wearing, the old habit of hiding myself still lingering like a shadow. She didn't look at my waistline. She didn't look at the dark circles under my eyes. She looked straight into my pupils with the same piercing intensity she used to bring to boardrooms. I heard you retired to play the corporate wife role, she said, her tone blunt but not unkind. I always thought that was a tragedy. You were the only person I knew who could dismantle a competitor's strategy before they even realized they were under attack. We sat on a bench near the playground. As the twins slept, I found myself spilling the truth, not about the weight, but about the weight of Ji-hoon's expectations. I told her about the diet contract, the public jokes, and the way I had started to believe I was nothing more than a failing asset. Ms. Park didn't offer me a tissue. She offered me a cold, hard stare. Min-hee, look at me, she commanded. A man like Ji-hoon doesn't attack a woman because she's weak. He attacks her because he's terrified of her potential. He's spent the last 2 years trying to convince you that your only value is your silhouette, because he knows that if you ever remember who you actually are, he won't be able to keep up with you. She reached into her designer bag and pulled out a business card, sliding it toward me. I'm launching a new venture. It's a tech-driven consultancy, and I need someone who isn't afraid of a fight. You've spent months recovering from birth, but what you really need to recover is your ambition. That brain of yours didn't go away just because you had babies. I looked at the card. It felt heavy, like a key to a door I had forgotten I locked. For months, Ji-hoon had made me feel like I was a broken product. But sitting there with Ms. Park, I remembered the thrill of a successful negotiation. I remembered the power of being the smartest person in the room. He thinks I'm a disgrace to his image, I whispered. Ms. Park laughed, a sharp, barking sound that made a few pigeons scatter. Let him think that. Let him be blinded by his own arrogance. While he's busy looking at your dress size, you can be busy looking at his market share. When if you're ready to stop being a trophy and start being a lion again, call me. I don't care how you look in a cocktail dress, Min-hee. I care how you look in a crisis. When I walked back into the penthouse that evening, the air didn't feel quite as heavy. Ji-hoon was in the living room, complaining to someone on the phone about a lack of discipline in his junior staff. I walked past him without a word, the business card tucked securely in my pocket. He didn't even look up. He had no idea that I had just found my first ally, and that for the first time in years I wasn't just planning a workout, I was planning a takeover. The months that followed were a masterclass in deception. To Ji-hoon, I was still the failing project he had relegated to the background of his life. Every morning, I purposely wore my most oversized, shapeless sweatshirts and thick lounge pants whenever he was in the room. I let my hair stay messy and kept my face bare of makeup, playing into his narrative that I had given up. When he looked at me, His eyes would dart away with a flick of irritation, as if I were a piece of furniture that no longer matched the decor. He was so blinded by his own contempt that he never noticed the way my jawline was sharpening or how my movements had regained their old, feline grace. In the secret hours of the dawn, the baggy clothes came off. In the small nursery-turned gym, I pushed my body to its limits. The soft edges left by the pregnancy were hardening into lean, functional muscle. I wasn't just losing weight, I was gaining a foundation. I could carry both twins up the stairs without losing my breath. I could hold a plank until the sun crested the horizon. But the real change was happening inside my mind. Each drop of sweat felt like I was washing away a layer of the insecurity Ji-hoon had spent years building. I spent my afternoons at the park or in quiet cafes, huddled over a laptop while the twins napped in their stroller. I was working for Ms. Park now, consulting on her new venture under a pseudonym. Diving back into the world of data, strategy, and market trends was like coming up for air after being underwater for a decade. I was sharp, I was efficient, and most importantly, I was making my own money. I funneled every paycheck into a private account he didn't know existed. While Ji-hoon thought I was at home wallowing in self-pity, I was actually dismantling the financial chains he used to keep me submissive. And the most difficult part was the acting. One evening, Ji-hoon came home early and found me eating a bowl of steamed vegetables and grilled chicken, fuel for my evening workout. He let out a dry, mocking laugh. "Still trying, I see. You might as well enjoy a steak, Min-hee. At this point, a little bit of broccoli isn't going to fix the damage." I looked down at my plate, letting my shoulders slump forward to hide the definition in my collarbone. "I'm just trying to be healthy, Ji-hoon," I said, pitching my voice to sound small and defeated. "Healthy is for people with time," he snapped, pouring himself a drink. "I need you to be presentable. The anniversary gala is in 3 weeks. It's the biggest night of the year for the firm. I've already told the press you won't be attending due to postnatal health complications. It's better that you stay hidden here than have you ruin the photos." I felt a surge of cold fury, but I kept my expression blank. He was literally trying to erase me from his public life. He wanted me to be a ghost in my own home while he played the part of the powerful, singular leader. "If that's what you want," I murmured, staring at the table. "It's what's necessary," he replied, already turning his back on me to check his phone. As he walked away, I straightened my spine. My baggy sweatshirt felt like a suit of armor. He had no idea that I had already bought my own dress for that gala, a dress that didn't require shapewear or his permission. He thought he was hiding a disgrace. But he was actually just giving me the perfect cover to plan my exit. The hidden transformation was complete. I was no longer the woman who had cried in that hospital bed. I was a weapon he had sharpened himself, and in 3 weeks, I was going to show him exactly what happens when you underestimate the person who knows all your secrets. The night of the anniversary gala arrived like a storm front. Despite his earlier claims that I would be staying home, Ji-hoon changed his mind at the last minute. He didn't do it out of kindness. He did it because he had a new, cruel strategy. He had decided that my failure to return to my former self could be rebranded as a testament to his own saintly patience. He wanted to parade me around the ballroom as the tragic, frumpy wife so he could receive nods of sympathy from his peers for being such a devoted husband despite my condition. "Put on that black velvet dress," he barked, standing in the doorway of my dressing room while checking his gold watch. "The one with the extra fabric around the waist. It's the only thing that might hide the mess you've made of yourself. And don't speak unless you're spoken to. I've told everyone you're still struggling with your hormones. Just smile, look grateful, and try not to stand too close to the buffet." I kept my back to him, huddled in my oversized robe. "I'll be ready in 20 minutes, I said, my voice muffled and seemingly timid. "Make it 10, he snapped. "I have a reputation to maintain, even if you don't." The moment the heavy master suite doors clicked shut, I moved with a speed and precision he didn't know I possessed. I didn't reach for the black velvet dress. Instead, I pulled a hidden garment bag from the very back of the closet, the one Ms. Park had helped me select. It was a floor-length emerald silk gown that clung to every lean, hard-won muscle I had built in the dark. It was the color of envy and rebirth. I did my own makeup, ditching the tired mother look for a sharp, winged eyeliner and a bold red lip that looked like a challenge. My hair, which I had been keeping in a messy bun for months, fell down my back in a glossy, healthy wave. When I looked in the full-length mirror, I didn't see a disgrace. I saw a woman who had been through a war and won. I slipped out of the penthouse before Ji-hoon could come back to check on me, taking a separate car I had arranged myself. I didn't want to arrive at his side. I wanted to arrive as his equal, or his superior. The gala was held in the grand ballroom of the Shilla Hotel. The air was thick with the scent of expensive lilies and even more expensive perfume. As I stepped onto the red carpet at the entrance, the clicking of cameras began almost instantly. I didn't duck my head. I didn't hide behind a clutch bag. I walked with my head held high, my spine a straight line of pure defiance. I spotted Ji-hoon near the center of the room, surrounded by a circle of high-ranking board members and their wives. He was mid-sentence, likely regaling them with a story of his corporate conquests. He hadn't noticed me yet. He was still looking at the door, expecting a woman in a baggy velvet dress to shuffle in with her eyes on the floor. As I glided toward the group, the conversation began to die down. One by one, the directors turned, their eyes widening. The wives, who had heard the rumors Ji-hoon had spread about my unfortunate state, looked at me with stunned silence. Ji-hoon finally turned around, a condescending remark already half-formed on his lips. "There you are. The words died in his throat. His glass of champagne tilted dangerously in his hand as his eyes raked over me. He looked for the soft edges, the mess, the woman who was supposed to make him look like a martyr. Instead, he found a woman who looked like she could buy and sell his company. His face went through a rapid succession of emotions: confusion, shock, and finally a deep, bubbling rage as he realized he had lost control of the narrative. "What are you wearing?" he hissed, stepping toward me and trying to lower his voice. "This wasn't the plan." "Your plan, Ji-hoon," I whispered, leaning in close so only he could hear the ice in my voice. "Not mine. You wanted everyone to see your wife tonight. Well, here I am. Take a good look, because this is the last time you'll ever see me standing behind you." The sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new office, but unlike the cold, sterile glass of the penthouse, this space felt warm. It was filled with the sound of a bustling team and the distant, joyful babble of my twins playing in the bright, on-site daycare I had helped design. A year had passed since the night of the gala, and the woman who had walked out of that ballroom felt like a character from a book I had long ago finished reading. I sat at my desk, near reviewing the quarterly growth for the firm I now co-owned with Ms. Park. We weren't just surviving, we were leading the industry. My name was no longer whispered as a disgrace or a project. It was cited in financial journals as a symbol of resilience and strategic brilliance. The boss had tried to convince me that my brain had withered after childbirth, but the market had proven him wrong. Ironically, Ji-hoon's own firm had struggled to keep up with our pace, his rigid, archaic management style failing to adapt to a world that valued empathy and innovation over fear. My physical transformation had settled into something sustainable and real. I didn't spend 3 hours a day in a gym because I was afraid of a man's glare. I moved my body because it made me feel alive and capable. I ate because I loved the energy it gave me to chase my toddlers around the park. The silver stretch marks on my skin remained, but I no longer saw them as flaws to be hidden under baggy clothes. They were my medals of honor, proof that I could create life and survive the fire of betrayal. Every morning when I looked in the mirror, I didn't check the scale. I checked the light in my eyes. The hollowness was gone, replaced by a steady, quiet confidence. I had learned that true beauty wasn't about meeting a CEO's standards. It was about the freedom to define myself. The door to my office swung open, and the nanny led the twins in for our lunch break. They ran toward me, their small hands reaching for my own. As I scooped them both up, feeling their solid weight and hearing their laughter, I thought about the lifestyle contract I had once cried over. I had shredded that paper, and in doing so, I had shredded the version of myself that believed I was only worth what a man decided. Ji-hoon still sent occasional bitter emails about legalities and image, but they were like pebbles thrown at a fortress. He was still obsessed with the shadow, while I was living in the sun. I had lost the weight of his expectations, the weight of his cruelty, and the weight of a marriage that was never a partnership. I walked to the window, holding my son and daughter, and looked out over the city. I was a mother, a leader, and a survivor. I was no longer a trophy on a shelf or a disgrace in a boardroom. I was Min-hee, and for the first time in my life, I was exactly the size I was meant to be.